Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story. All right. Hello, readers. Welcome back to the She Reads Romance Books podcast. Today is a super exciting episode because I am joined by a best-selling author known for her contemporary and paranormal romance books who had a recent release, one of her werewolf romance books, and I'm so excited to talk to her about that today, plus so much more. So welcome, Anne Marsh, to the show.
Thank you.
So glad you are here. So I want to say first, congrats on the release, Truth or Wolf. I'm sure it's been a crazy but very exciting recent week with that release. Did you feel good about it?
It's funny. It never really gets old. I mean, the releases always seem to sneak up on me. You know, 1 minute it feels like you're just trying to make your deadlines and get there. You're like, right. Okay, 10,000 words, 20,000 words, 100,000 words. This is a really long one. I think it was about 120,000. It's like an omnibus book. But yeah, and then suddenly you're at release week and it's fun and it's scary because other people who are not related to you and who are not, like your best writing friends are reading it. You're like, oh God, what are they going to think?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I read it and I loved it. So
Thank you.
Yes, it's fantastic.
It was a lot of fun for me. I've been writing, I'm not sure, 15 years maybe. But, a number of my writing friends, when I talk about it, you kind of get burned out or tired or, you're just trying to think, okay, I've got 2 more books on this contract. Whereas 10 years ago, you're like, oh, I got a book contract. I'm super excited. Now you're like, okay, I got to write another book. And this was, an opportunity to work with Reid and Smartypants romance. And it was so much fun. I had a welcome call with Penny and she's like, oh, why did you want to do this project? And I'm like, because it's fun. And sometimes, especially when you're working in New York publishing, there's a little bit less fun. So I was super excited to write this one and have a chance to kind of go back to werewolves and share it with the world.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I definitely want to talk about Smarty Romance, but let's talk about the book first, if you would. And so for people who aren't familiar with Truth or Wolf, do you mind giving us a brief summary of what it's about?
Dreaded elevator pitch question.
I know, right?
I know. I basically stopped going to writing conference. I have never quite managed it. I think basically in a nutshell, so we've got our scientific heroine, Alice Ames, and she's been nursing an irrational lifelong crush on Atticus Boom, who's our hot, bearded, small-town mechanic hero. And she also has a lifelong hatred for his grumpy identical twin, Ford Boone. And so she comes back to town. She's starting over. She's down and out. And then she kisses who she thinks is Atticus. And it turns out she's kissed the wrong twin. And she's unprepared for kissing the wrong twin. And then she's even more unprepared for Ford being insatiably interested in her. And that he turns out to be a werewolf. Then hijinks ensue.
Yes, definite hijinks for sure. When I think it was, it had to have been a while ago when Penny put out like, oh, what do you guys think? Like to her readers, what do you guys think about, Pennyverse becoming like historical or paranormal and fantasy? I was like, yes, I am so for it. So when I heard this book, I was like, this is so cool and such a great idea.
So much fun. I think the first Pennyverse book I realized I was reading, because I'd read some but just hadn't connected the dots. I was like, I saw them and I was like, oh, like Lainey's book. I'm like, oh, fun. This is great. I'm reading it. Was the historical take on Neanderthal.
Yes,
the Duchess. And that was so much fun.
So much fun.
And that was I had a writer friend, she's like, oh, Penny Reid taking, he's got an open call. She only does it once a year for Smartypants romance. She's like, you should pitch him, a contemporary romance. It's like, wait, I just read, Neanderthal takes Duchess and I wanted to like werewolf.
So, well, did you then say, hey, I could take your Winston Brothers series and just totally make this a really cool werewolf series? Or was she sort of angling for that and looking for somebody to take that on?
I honestly don't know. This is where one would like to pretend that one is super well organized and thought about this and had a wonderful career plan and was, preparing for 6 months. But no, I wrote the pitch in 24 hours before the call for proposals closed because, well, that's one thing New York Publishing teaches you to do is to just turn it around fast. But it's also a really good sign when it comes together. If you can't put a proposal together that fast, you don't know what the book is. It hasn't gelled. And then you're going to log through it. I think most of us have learned that if you bore yourself in your proposal, it's only downhill from there. It's nice somebody wrote you a check to write the book, but you are going to earn every penny of that check. So I just had fun with it. I was kind of at a point where I want to do this. Everyone keeps saying Paranormal's dead in New York, and I've been doing some indie for it. And I've been writing a lot of contemporaries for Harlequin. I'm like, I want to do werewolves. And Penny's books are just hilarious. And her Winston Brothers series has always been one of my favorite comfort reads. So I pitched it. And then what she did tell me after they accepted it was that apparently they had been hoping somebody would do a paranormal take. And I guess I'm the first and now I'll be the only, since they're not going to be doing more.
Oh, that's so great.
So it was like, there's a line. Yeah. Had no idea they wanted werewolves, but I just, come on, hot bearded mechanics. They need to turn furry all the way. That's.
So I'll dive into, I guess, the similarities. Did you feel like you had free reign to transform the Winston brothers as you saw fit, or?
Penny's super supportive. She is the best friend, writer, editor, boss person that I think all of us kind of fantasize about. If you want to hop on a call and talk about anything, I'm happy to talk it out. For me, I'm not so much a talk things through. I'm a take it away and chew on it person, and then, write 10,000 words of notes to myself, because that's just how I process. So no, I mean, she was very clear that, it could be as sexy as I wanted or as closed door as I wanted. You have to somehow capture that voice and the feeling of the first one, I feel. But no, she has no rule. It's really awesome. It's here's the sandbox, go have fun.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm surprised actually, because I think many people would have a hard time letting go of the creative control like that. But I felt nothing but supported, and it's yeah, just take it, run with it, have fun.
Oh, that's so great and exciting too. Well, you mentioned Lainey Hatcher taking her other series and making them historical. Did you have a powwow session with her being so how did you, what was your process, or you didn't really need that?
No, super supportive. So we chatted a little bit, but not just through messaging, but not about the writing process. Just we're hi, how are you? Well, I read your book. I loved it. In my case. No. Yeah, no. So actually, I don't think, I don't tend to be a brainstormer, not with actual human beings. I just, the whole talking it through when my very first book that I sold, which was to New York, to what was then Dorchester before they just imploded spectacularly. First book, had never read a book on writing. Had no idea what I was doing, but I'd been working for Pixar, and I got laid off when they were bought by Disney.
Oh, wow.
Went home, cried, ate 2 pounds of M&Ms, and then I was okay. My mom had given me this stack of magazines a few weeks before, and it's I had a Good Housekeeping that had one of those really cheesy reinvent your life, do what you want to do articles on it. So I was okay, Good Housekeeping, I'm going to do that. So I wrote a paragraph of a historical romance, because I'd always thought, given my background, I would do historical, and that was bad. Really bad. It's sitting there in this little sad puddle of goo, and I did this really ridiculous paranormal romance, which is kind of like the Jell-O salad that everybody brings to Christmas dinner, at least in my family circle, where it's it's some color that is absolutely not natural, and it's got every leftover probably 3-year-old piece of candy and pretzel and fossilized marshmallow that was in their kitchen when they made it, because no one's going to eat it. You're going to look at it. Yeah, just put all my favorite bits in, and I sold, but then it was not the most well-structured book. Let's just put it that way. And they bought it having seen the whole thing, because when you're new, you don't sell on proposal. You have to give them the whole book. So bless my editor, at least the content, she knew exactly what she had bought. And it did really well, but she, she would call me, and then she'd want to brainstorm what we could do to fix the particular chapter, and to give me verbal edit notes, which I have never had before or since. People usually write them down. And that's when I learned I'm not a think it through out loud. It was a lot of her saying, blah, 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 whoa, what about this? And you're okay, let me take a note and get back to you on that.
Right.
But, besides the fact she was the first ever editor I talked to, so I was ooh, big, scary person that I really want to impress.
Yes. Well, gosh, that's really impressive. But that's great that you have your process, you own it, and you don't change it. And it just sort of worked for this one too, which is awesome. But were there any key paranormal elements that were important to you to incorporate into this book? When I think of werewolves, I think of protection or possessiveness, or and now it seems like some of them are more the whole nodding business, but what was important?
Oh, yeah,
certain things important to you? Yeah.
So I'm thinking Allie Hazelwood's book. Yes. There is no nodding. That I'm actually scared to Google. I understand what she's getting at, but I'm nope, don't quite understand that. Don't really know how to write that. She did a beautiful job with it. Her nodding scene is amazing. It's super sexy and romantic, and the characters, it just really moves the relationship forward. I admire her. Can't do that. No, I wanted the dramatic transformation. I always like it when they're in wolf form. Usually I have a good chase scene, and I didn't do that in this book. But one of the nice things about the original Winston brothers is that they are they're possessive in a really nice way. They know what they want. They know who they love. And they are like 2000% all in.
Yes.
And so that really fit well for me with the paranormal world. Just to, you see someone and on all sorts of levels that this person is the person for you, and you're still enjoying getting to know them, and you are falling in love too, but you've got that emotional commitment kind of from the get-go that this is a relationship that the hero really, really, really wants to make work. He hasn't been a relationship person before, but now he is, and he's going to learn, and he's all in.
And he was all in before she even was aware.
I like that. I think that's actually very popular just in general in paranormal circles. I mean, like someone like Ruby Dixon, I mean, that's exactly it. You see this person and you know that person is just the right fit for you, not because they're perfect, but because, they are who they are. And you may be figuring out and getting to know them and learning them. And that's a really fun, exciting part of the process, but just that you have that bedrock commitment there that you can count on. I think enough of us in real life have not had that bedrock commitment, that it's something that I personally like to make sure goes into the books that I write.
Well, and I love that you kept that aspect of Ford that I loved about Dwayne in Truth or Beard, that he wanted to court her, and was definitely just supportive of her in all things. Were there any other particular pieces of that original story that you felt like you wanted to draw, like the barbecue scene, within there? And I thought that was fabulous.
Vegetable jokes.
Yes, the vegetable
zucchinis. Yes. Penny Reid has this amazing gift for raunchy puns that are just super fun. It's just one, not dirty joke, but just like pun after another. So to try to replicate a little bit of that. There's, I think it's in the Truth or Beard, they keep going on about zucchini. They make all the zucchini jokes that you would expect. So, yes. Well, I wanted to keep that.
And you did. Like, I was so impressed with your writing because I'm like, man, like even the cat names, I'm like, this woman's got it going on, and just like how the boys are named.
Really
they were
cool. Fun. I think that's what made such a difference for me with this project, was that it was just fun. And I really felt like Penny Reid had all these really cool toys and she was letting me play with them. So I really appreciate her doing that.
And was Moonlight Valley fun to create? Because I know you sort of live in a small town too, right? Did you pull in anything to?
Well, I'm new to small town. I grew up in Vermont, and then I was in California for 25 years, which is not the part I was in the Bay Area, so very much not small town. I am not an urban gal by any stretch of the imagination. I'm pretty much a hermit. If you could give me like a cave with a moat around it on like a really tall mountain, I'm like, that would be my happy place. Yes, but it is really funny. So I'm now living in North Carolina, which is technically Southern, and people have Southern accents. And I had just started this, and I had to take my car into a mechanic because it was doing so. I have no idea what the heck it was doing. It was just really weird. And so someone's like, oh yeah, just take it to the downtown mechanic. I'm in this fairly small town. And the guy comes out and he's got a beard and he's wearing coveralls. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I have a Winston right here in front of me. And he had a drawl so thick. I'm a New Englander by birth. And I was like, what are you? And then he's talking car. So forget it. I don't have a chance. Super nice guy. He's like, charged me $10 because, he got it up and running, but he wasn't sure. I might have to take it into the dealer. So yes. So little pieces like that, where apparently the whole Southern gentleman thing, like especially the guys in my neighborhood, they're like, oh yes, please let me fix this thing for you that's broken. I've had people come and fix my car. They're like, yes, I would really like to do your home improvement project for you. Oh, you need a tool? Here, let me loan you a tool. It's really nice.
It is nice. And it is very different from the Northeast. I mean, I don't want to peg everybody in the same light, but I lived in Boston for like 20 some years. And it's very different.
It is. And California has its pluses and its minuses. And it's a very vibrant community. And I had great neighbors there. Berkeley was a little weird. But once I moved out of Berkeley, I had really great neighbors. Some of them were great in Berkeley and some of them were just like, wow, you've been living in Berkeley all your life. But yeah. There is something about the core Southern gentleman who's had these really strong moral values and is going to look out for the people in his life and look out for his neighbor. And truly, if you get stuck in a ditch, people stop here. And not only do they stop, but it's like, they have chains in their truck and they're going to pull you out and then they're going to give your car a once over and then they're going to tell you to have a nice night. And, that's, lovely. It is. So I wanted to have that kind of warm community. And then I've met a few characters here, met a few characters in California. So I wanted to try to have a secondary cast of characters that was fun. Everybody can't have their own book. As an author, you always want to write a book for absolutely everybody, but it's about people making cameos.
Love it. Love it. Well, let's talk about the heroine of the story, Alice.
Alice.
She's a scientist, and I love that she was counting the fireflies, but she wants to run a pet business in Nashville.
Let's be entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur, absolutely. What do you think readers are going to love most about her?
What do I think people would love most about Alice? I think one, that she's got grit. She's realistic, but she's also willing to take a chance and to explore. She absolutely stands up for herself. And she's very much an equal in her relationship, but she's curious, which I think also helps. Like you said, she's a scientist. She's a citizen scientist, actually. There really is a Firefly citizen scientist project that you can join where they have you go out and catch her. I learned about that when my kiddo was applying to college and we were trying to beef up the resume. I'm like, look, you can be a citizen scientist. And she didn't do it in high school, but she's done some citizen scientists, like help lead them afterwards, in internships as an undergraduate. So
wow. Yeah.
So it was just, I like the fact that Alice, and I think this is something that resonates with people, life has dealt her a few blows. Her career trajectory has not gone in the direction that she wanted it to go or anticipated it, as I'm sure many of us, I'm raising my hand, be like, yep. Sometimes, despite your best effort, you get a lemon and it's still a lemon. It's not lemonade. So she's come back to town. And I personally always imagine going back to things like high school reunions. And you're like, oh, yes, I'm going to come in on my private jet and I'm going to be super successful. And I'm going to have done all the things and had the image makeover and it's going to be fabulous. But you kind of come back home with her tail between her legs and she's starting over. And she succeeded at that, she takes her second chance and she gets her happy ending.
I love that she's a woman with a plan, and I could totally she has her colored pens and in her planner, and even though she finds the love of her life, she is like, well, let's talk because I have this goal, right? And she doesn't necessarily want to compromise on that to a point, but I loved her grit and both of their ability to communicate, which was awesome.
Yes, that's one of the things I think that sometimes in romance books doesn't happen. We talk about it sometimes in writing circles. If you could solve all of the problems in the book by two people just sitting down and having a conversation, like page 5, that's not super satisfying. It really isn't. And then, when I first started reading romance when I was 13, a lot of the heroine gives up her plans for the future. There's a lot of that where she doesn't necessarily get, she thinks she's going to have a family, or she thinks she's going to have a career, or she thinks she's going to do A or B or whatever it is, kind of ends up compromising to support the hero. So I didn't want Alice to be giving up her dreams. I mean, I think in any successful relationship, there's compromise. There has to be compromise both ways. But he needs to support her. She needs to support him. And I did not want Alice and her entrepreneurial dreams to be like, oh, so sad. I fell in love. I don't need that anymore. I've got Ford and he's my end all and be all. That's not healthy.
Right. No, exactly. Well, Ford, gosh, I loved the grumpy, reserved twin. He was perfect. What do you think people will love most about him besides the bearded werewolf shapeshifter?
I feel like a huge sucker for big grumpy heroes. My Harlequin editor likes to joke that every single thing I picture is a big grumpy hero. She'll be very pleased. The book I just delivered last week has a big sunshine hero. Look, I flipped it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So honestly, he's a big grumpy guy, but he's a marshmallow inside, which is, I always enjoy that. But he also sees Alice. He sees Alice for Alice. She is perfect for him, but she doesn't have to be perfect, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important. He sees her, he wants to court her, he spends time, he pays attention to her. He knows the little things, or he recognizes little things that matter to her. And, that the presents he makes, the dates he takes her on, the things he does, the things he says, they're not one size fits all. They're for Alice, and they're what he thinks works for Alice.
Right. Exactly.
Kind of guy, we don't let to date or marry or see or encounter, I think.
I have a favorite quote of how she initially described him. And it's funny because you mentioned M&Ms. Is M&Ms a favorite candy of yours?
I don't think I discriminate against candy.
Oh, okay. Well, she describes him as an M&M, where it's being in his company was like biting into an M&M only to discover there'd been a factory malfunction and all you got was a bright candy shell and no chocolate. pretty on the outside, but entirely difficult inside.
It's at the beginning. And then she discovers he does have a center.
He does. And I loved his center. He was very compassionate, very much an alpha man. I mean, he is a werewolf, right? But yet so very compassionate. And like you said,
I think
saw her.
the important thing with Ford is, he can take care of her and he can be there for her and he will, but he's not going to run over her. It's a partnership. I mean, he needs her to be there for him as much. And for me, that's, when you're writing an alpha hero, that's important. I absolutely, in a hero, I love that strength where it's like, yes, if I have a crap day, if something goes wrong, whatever it is, my partner can and will take care of me. He's going to be there. He's my bedrock. But it's not like I can't function without him. But it's wonderful to know that you've got that safety net and that person who's like, I'm here. If you need me, I'll catch you. Like those trust falls I make you used to do like in high school. People you didn't trust. Like
exactly. Yeah. Yes. Well, I absolutely love this book. And it sounds like we don't have to wait too much longer for the second book, which is dropping on Halloween. Is that right?
Halloween. Yes. Yes. They just told me last week, over the weekend, that Halloween. They're like, they couldn't resist. I'm like, that's absolutely perfect. Because it's a very fall-centric book. So I'll have to do some bonus content with like Halloween stories because that would be fun.
That sounds so great.
My daughter is very into the season. So everything has to be like seasonally themed. So, okay, how much of this can I, work in there? Especially since she opted with editing for me. So,
yeah. So you mentioned this is part of Smartypants romance. So take me back to like the very beginning. So how did you even come to know about Smartypants? What was the submission process like? And you said there was mentoring involved. Like, tell me a little bit about the process there.
I had read many, not all, but many of Penny's books, but I didn't realize she was doing this kind of alternative universe. I'd done one a couple years ago for another author they took a lot more books and there was no mentoring. So I didn't realize Penny Reid and Smartypants Romance was offering this opportunity to go write in their universe. But a writer friend of mine, Kat Cantrell, was like, oh, look, I saw this thing and you'd be so good for it. It'd be perfect for you. It'd be right up your alley.
Nice.
And I ignored her for a year. She said it again a year later.
What a good friend.
Like a good friend. And I was like, okay. And it was, like I said, somewhere between 24 and 36 hours before it closed. And I was assuming that when they said it was due on whatever the date was, they meant 11:59 p.m. So it was actually quite simple. And bless them, they're very clear about what they wanted. There was a Google form.
Okay.
And, you filled it out with what you were pitching and proposing and sample chapter, just one, which is nice.
Gotcha.
And you didn't have to do a full synopsis, just kind of like a little blurb thing. So I did that. And then they got back to me and said, yes, we wanted to do it. So meet and greet was a 3-way call with Penny Reid and Fiona, who does their editing and other things for them. And we just talked through the book and ideas and because it didn't exist at that point.
Right.
Like one chapter. And Penny she's very much a think on her feet person. She's hilarious. She came up with the name for Moonlight Valley and we just were riffing off each other. She had so much energy and so it was so much fun, but she's also very clear that it's my book and I'm in the driver's seat and she may be shouting, hey, what about that exit ramp over there? Wouldn't that be fun? We could do that or we could do this. But very much I was in the driver's seat, which is nice. Yeah. So I wrote the books and delivered it. They have a very nice, very supportive process. They are super collaborative. They have a very active Facebook group for the authors, and then God bless them, they actually market the books. This is something you don't get in New York.
Interesting. Okay.
As much, I think there's very much a tier in New York. If they spend a crap ton of money, I can say that on, buying your book, they will promote it because they'd like to get their money back. But I think for some of the houses, sometimes it's just like with Harlequin, the category line kind of markets itself and readers like that line and then they just come and buy the other books in it.
Gotcha.
Other titles, you just sink like a stone. So Smartypants was really lovely about they have ways of marketing and promoting and getting the word out and sharing, and they do that. And they do that for all of their authors, just like across the board, which is something I really appreciate.
That's great. Well, I mean, as a reader, we just get the finished product, right?
You
so
do.
It's really cool to hear like the behind the scenes, like what does it even mean to pitch a book or what does it mean? What do you have to provide? So that's pretty cool to hear.
Well, Smartypants is a little different. They know what they wanted. That was a Google form and, just one sample chapter. Did not do it through my agent because it was more of an indie project for me. My agent handled my New York proposal and that's a little more formal. But yeah, I mean, usually at this point, as an established author, you write a synopsis, which, according to my Harlequin editor, should be 2 pages, and according to me, should be 15. So we're still learning to meet in the middle. And you usually do 3 chapters. And then you do like an author, like your agent will put together like a little package about how many copies you've sold and how many books you've written and kind of what your brand is. And then she, because my agent is a she, will shop it around New York to various editors and houses.
Gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
so when did you start writing for Harlequin, and and are you still writing for Harlequin itself?
I am still writing for Harlequin. I started with Dorchester. I like to think of myself as the line killer. I really should like open a second business. Like if you would like to take out a business opponent of yours, like hire me to write books, because I wrote for Dorchester. They imploded spectacularly. The gossip about why they went under is just like, you really can't even make it up.
Oh my gosh.
So then I went over and I wrote for Kensington. I followed my editor. She was absolutely wonderful. Wrote for Kensington for their Brava and their Aphrodisian lines. They both closed. Went over to Harlequin, and I've written now for 3 lines that have closed. But I keep following my editors. So I'm still writing for the same editor I've been writing for like 7 years now, Kathleen Spiebling. And Harlequin started a new line called Afterglow.
Okay. Yeah.
And the first books came out in January. So my first title with them, I was supposed to be this summer, but it will be next summer because somebody didn't deliver her book in time. So that somebody gets to be in the June, I think it's June, it might be July 1st of 2025.
Nice. Nice.
Yes. But that's actually really fun because that's not a category line. That's full length. It's full length, and all of the books, I've only read 3 or 4 of them, are very different. They're all fun, but they're very different from each other.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully I won't kill that line.
Fingers crossed.
I would really like to not kill that.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's contemporary. Although I am hoping, because one of the first books that came out in January or February had witches in it. So I'm like, can I please add witches to my second book that I owe you?
Yeah.
So
that sounds awesome.
I've decided if my editor fails to answer that email, I'm just going to take that as yeah.
And it sounds like, so after you left, you said Pixar, you just started writing, and then it became like, oh my gosh, I love this and want to continue forever. Or how did that even come about?
I'm really not sure how to answer that. I think I was one of those little kiddos that always thought she was going to write. I wrote a lot of really angsty poetry.
Okay.
I did, I like went for like 5 years only wearing black clothing. I did playwriting, actually. I did something called Sparks in the Park. So I went to New York City and they workshopped one of my plays. It was like a thing for like kids like ages like 15 to 19 or something. So that was really fun. And I did all the literary magazine thing, as an undergraduate. But I was always reading romance on the side.
Okay.
Tried to stop. Embarrassed about that. But yeah, I was like, oh my God, is this, because I was an English major, and then I went to graduate school again in, Russian literature. So like Russian literature is just, especially like 19th century stuff, deathly serious. But I was always, all of us were passing romance books back and forth.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then I was in Moscow or St. Petersburg, one of the two. And they used to have these blankets spread out by the train stations and people would sell books. And there was a Harlequin category book that had been translated into Russian. And I was just like, that would be like the peak of a career, is you write a book and then someone translates it into Russian, and then, you're for sale for like 5 rubles, like 2 cents, by the train station. Yeah. So it was something I'd always had in the back of my head. And then when I got laid off Pixar, which I was like, oh my gosh, that's your dream job. How are you going to recover from that? Pixar was a super cool place. Not perfect, but super cool.
And you were a writer for Pixar or for?
No. Well, I was a technical writer.
Gotcha.
So I did software documentation. I was not like a screenplay writer. I sat next to them, which was really fun because my kids were little, and like you would move around the studio. It was like this massive 2-story building in Emeryville, California. You would move around the studio because you would belong to a particular film, and they would usually have like 3 in development. So I would kind of move around, and my first one, I was sitting next to the Ratatouille screenwriters. So I actually had the rat cages like right next to my cubicle. And these were like the world's longest lived rats. My kids loved it. They would come in on the weekends or on the weekdays, and then they'd sit down on the sofa and like they'd play with the rats. But what it is, especially for Remy. Yeah, and Pixar was great. But no, I was the technical writer. They had lots of classes. I also was associated with Pixar University there. Although again, teaching software classes, not writing classes, you could take classes. And they would bring in people, like they brought in someone to teach screenwriting and someone to teach fiction writing, and you would just take these classes. So I was kind of like, oh yeah, I really want to do that. Do I want to write like super angsty lit fic?
Right.
Or do I do this stuff that's fun?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I got laid off, and I was like, screw it, I'm going to do the fun stuff, which, what turns out makes much more money than writing literary fiction does.
And you've been super successful at it. I mean, you've written a lot of books. And impressive. Yeah.
That's you just put your butt in the chair and you write. I remember being really, really scared after the first book. I had an option clause, which means that your publisher has the right to see your next work and to bid on it. And there's like all this fancy language around it, but they basically expect to see it. You've got an agent at that point. Your agent also expects you to be more than a one book wonder. And it's like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to like come up with anything else? And yeah,
Nice.
yeah, I just keep coming.
Wow. And so where you are now in your career, do you have a preference, like contemporary versus paranormal, or do you just like going back and forth?
I wish I did. That would have been easier if I'd picked one or the other. I like both. I really do. There's just slightly different story arcs.
Okay. I was going to say, is there a difference in writing them or not really? I don't know.
Well, I'm going to say yeah.
Okay.
I think you can get away with slightly more ridiculous tropes, fun tropes. Alpha males are much easier to deal with in a paranormal world. You can put some boundaries on it. I love me a good fated mate story.
Yes.
There's things that you can do in a paranormal world that, all the rest of us would be like, call the cops. If you did it in a contemporary world, it's just not acceptable, right? So yeah, I do like doing both, but there's like too many ideas.
Nice. I know. Well, while readers pick up Truth or Wolf, and then while we're waiting for Wolf and Barrett, what other paranormal romance book of yours do you recommend that we pick up and read?
What other paranormal romance book of mine? Yeah, and I got to think about what I've written.
Well, I'll say Bad Wolf is definitely on my TBR list because I loved the book summary and just the nod to like Little Red Riding Hood. I thought that sounded really cool.
Yeah, actually, that would be the one that I would pick. That is Thang's book, I believe. Yes, he has no filter. Bless his heart, he has no filter. His heart's in the right place, but he is very rough around the edges. He's funny, he's irreverent, and he kind of rushes in without necessarily overthinking things. I had a lot of fun with him. Yes, so that is my Breed MC series, and that's a bunch of werewolf bikers.
Bakers or bikers?
Bikers. They're not bakers. Bakers would be fun, but I don't know. I'm not saying anything about motorcycles, actually. I very much don't know anything about motorcycles, but I don't know anything. I know even less about baking, to be honest. I've always wanted to write one of those baking books that you see that have like the cupcakes and stuff on the cover. So that'd be so much fun, but no.
You actually werewolf biker, I can definitely get behind. Yeah.
Yes. He's a werewolf biker.
Awesome. Well, before we get on, if you have a few more minutes, I want to talk about Anne the Reader. Is there anything else you want us to know about Truth or Wolf or the Moonlight Valley or Wolf Brothers series? I guess it's called. Just that there's more to come, hopefully, even after.
There is more to come. Yeah. Penny said I'm going to do 2 more in 2025.
Nice.
So I get to do my favorite one. My all-time favorite Penny Reid book is the one with Cletus. I don't remember the title off of my head.
Weird Science, you think it was?
Yes, that would make sense. I just love Cletus.
Ranger now in this?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Cletus Ranger. We'll just call him CR.
I know.
Yes, I absolutely adore him. And then honestly, Jenny, the Banana Cake Queen, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm still working out all the pieces of that. So that's the one I've just started.
So there you have it, folks. We've got even more to look forward to in this series after reading Truth or Wolf. So be sure to pick up your copy and get started on it now. If you'd like to hear more from Anne, our conversation continued where I asked Anne a bunch of fun questions about her love of reading romance, what some of her favorite romance books are, and lots more. You can gain instant access to this exclusive extended interview when you join the She Reads Romance Books book club. Plus, when you join, you'll gain instant access to all of my exclusive author interviews from those who have joined me on the podcast, including favorite romance authors such as Catherine Center, Amy Dawes, Candy Steiner, and so many more. So visit shereadsromancebooks.com/book club to join today. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode of the podcast. Be sure to hit follow so you can catch even more on the podcast coming up. But until next time, happy reading because life is better with a love story. That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.